Ladies and gentlemen, grab your gloves and get your compost ready. Stepping into the ring is the perennial powerhouse, the sultan of soil, the beast of the beds, where permaculture reigns, food grows wild, community roots run deep, and yes, the garden punts hit hard. Freedom starts in the soil. This is the Guerrilla Gardening Show.
Welcome back to the Guerrilla Gardening Show. I'm Mike with Mike's in the Garden. Back again with my friend Sam from Central Florida Abundance. What's happening, Sam?
What's going on, Mike? Well, what's going on, y'all? I'm staying warm out here. It's still cold. It warmed up for about a week, and now we're dealing with some frost again.
It's officially winter here in Florida. This is I forget what they call it, like the fake first winter. Probably lasts for like a week or two, and then warm weather comes in, and then January gets cold again, and then February might get cold. When I first moved here, the first February was the hottest February ever. I think it was like 90 degrees. So
It can definitely be a roller coaster, and it can be hard for some plants to adapt to those conditions, especially if they're not used to our climate. I
yeah,
think that's kind of what you wanted to talk about today.
yeah.
Um,
Today is one of the first cold days by Floridian standards, and so I figured it would be a good subject to tackle, mainly what type of preparation somebody should go through to protect their plants when there's cold weather. Now, this video, if you're watching it, thank you, um, is most specifically for our region of Florida, Zone 9B, 10A, and somewhat around there. So, if you're in Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, North Carolina, Georgia, some of this might apply, but you guys definitely get freezing temperatures where it's pretty rare we get, you know, below freezing temperatures here. So,
Yeah, we're usually going for like light covers and just slight warming. If you're in a real, if you're getting snow for a couple days, even in North Florida sometimes, yeah, you got to take a little bit more drastic measures. But even here in the subtropics, if you're trying to grow really tropical stuff, you're trying to push your zones or grow stuff out of season, you do need to do some covering at some types of the year, in the winter, even as short as it may be.
so first, I want to share a clip of the local news at a nursery talking about what they're doing. And I think this is an older clip from like a year or two ago, but it would still apply. So we'll watch it real quick and then we can kind of, I guess, stop and comment as we go, see if we want to add anything, and I guess circle back, see if there's anything they missed or not. So here is our local news here. Let's see what Susie has to say.
Yeah, well, I'm at Appenberry's Gardens, and as you can see, I am surrounded by beautiful blooming plants. And in our subtropical climate, these plants usually do very well. But this weekend, as we've been reporting, freezing temperatures are headed our way. So all of these beauties are going to be placed indoors. And if you have plants you love, you should do the same.
Okay, yeah, so this is definitely a couple of years ago, freezing temperatures, but um
I want to know how they got that many flowers blooming in the middle of December, January, whenever this was. Uh,
I think that's when it was. So
no, that's the real problem here.
One of the joys of living in
I mean, if you got space to put all your plants inside, on freezing nights, sometimes that's not a bad idea. Most of us keep most of our plants in the ground, and so that can be difficult. Also, moving a bunch of pots into your home can be a bit of an ordeal, very dirty. You don't want all that in your kitchen overnight. But if you have a shed, you know, a place that is insulated, gonna stay a little bit warmer than the outside air, then, throwing in the shed can definitely protect some of these more sensitive plants. Um,
I do have
But
the couple videos I have to share, one a couple the other two are, gardeners, I guess would fall in our category, and this is, like a commercial.
yeah, a big retail place.
Yeah, so I guess we can kind of see the dynamic here, and then we can
And what they'll probably do, I mean, if it's a big enough place, they have greenhouses that they're gonna bring these into, not necessarily
I
their
think you'll
house.
I think you'll be interested in what they do here, Sam.
Oh, okay.
You want to
Oh, there's
protect
more.
the surface from any frost. And frost forming is just like little ice particles, and it'll freeze the leaf and cause it to burn.
Eric Appin of Appinberries in College Park says flowering plants and herbs.
Interrupt him while he's telling us important stuff.
Says you should cover them with a frost cloth to protect and insulate them. And if you are considering using a bed sheet, not advisable.
What they don't do so well is provide any insulating values. They don't really warm the plant.
Appin also says don't use plastic. It doesn't allow plants to breathe and can actually make them colder. Other tips are be sure to anchor your frost cloth down, as freezing weather tends to be windy weather. And when it comes to your outdoor water sources, make sure your spigots and hoses are turned off and not leaking. That water could freeze. Also, remember to turn off your automatic irrigation system Saturday night, because any water sprayed on your plants will likely harm them.
If you're running water and the temperature is low enough, that water is going to freeze. Now, a lot of people call and they say, we see them doing this in the citrus groves. They do it to protect the fruit, but it does still sometimes damage the plant. So you do want to make sure that as your average homeowner, that's not a technique you're going to try to employ.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure you show me that because you know that's what I do to protect my plants. I run water, and I mean, in some cases, you do have to be careful. I make sure that my sprinklers aren't spraying my plants directly. Mostly what I keep is a mist of moisture, around my tropical plants. Um, but what also I'm questioning is them saying to turn off your pipes
Yeah,
when for freezing, because it's the opposite of
the
that. You
opposite.
should running
Sure.
water is not going to freeze.
Right.
So, I mean,
That's
but
what
the other
I'm
things
from
they
New
said,
England. That's what they say is to avoid your
yeah,
pipes freezing, just let it drip a little bit. So
yeah,
I was
because that
surprised
running
that they
water
said that
stays a
too.
little bit warmer.
Yeah.
you know, I mean, sometimes when you're on an interview, things, get away from you.
Well,
But the other
she said
things,
that he didn't necessarily say it.
oh, okay, that's
Uh,
true. It was a voiceover. That's how they
yes.
get you with the
Yeah.
slick editing.
She interrupted him telling us potentially valuable information to interject her own voice in there. So these I
The
forget what they call
covers,
them. The cloths there, yeah.
yeah. I usually tell people like, if it's gonna freeze, don't not cover it just because you didn't think you had the right material. If you have plastic sheeting, you can use that to cover your plants. The most important things are that you keep whatever material that you use off of the plant. You don't want any leaf to fabric contact because the cold's going to transfer through that. And so, you know, I mean, usually what I do is get as many stakes as possible around my plant, get another one in the middle, and
Mhm.
then drape a sheet over the stakes. And so, ideally you'll have ground contact. Um, but then if you are using something like plastic, and they said, it's non-breathable, it can smother your plants. That's totally true. So
Yeah.
you
Poke
want to
some
make
holes in it.
sure, well, then you lose that insulating quality.
True.
But all you really need to do is take it off the next morning. Once you get past those freezing temperatures, then you need to take that plastic off. And I mean, most plants, even if you wait a day or two, it's going to be all right. Um, and I would
So
say annuals are probably more sensitive than like your trees and such.
Sure. So, kind of what sparked the idea for this episode, obviously, it was cold this morning, but I'm driving through my neighborhood and I always find it funny. I think it was 39 degrees, is what, and that might have been 7, 8 o'clock this morning. So the sun was, out by then. So I don't know exactly what it got down to, maybe the mid 30s, but um, I'll see people wrap their trees, last night. It's cold today. It's going to be cold again tomorrow. They'll wrap them for 2, 3 days. And
Yeah.
don't, I don't think that makes sense, but what do you say, Sam? I know it's a lot of work to constantly
Yeah.
wrap them, but
I
also,
mean,
is it even necessary when it's 39 degrees? I mean, if we're talking cold temperatures, are we really talking about it needs to get close to freezing before we really should be concerned?
so I mean, it does depend on the plant.
Okay,
There are, and it's really, specific degree marks, and it's really specific degree marks that are going to harm plants. 32 degrees, and that's not like, if it touches
exactly.
32
Yeah.
degrees, but if it gets to 32 degrees and stays there for an hour or more, then that's going to cause damage to any plants that are sensitive to within that range. Uh, there are some tropical plants, some real tropical fruit trees, the soursops, that's the main one. All the Atomoyas, they're real sensitive. But below 40 degrees, they're going to start dropping their leaves. And, that's a stress to the tree. And so if you can keep it warmer than 40, that's difficult, on these real cold nights. Um, so it's kind of a trade-off. The other thing I would say is, it would depend on how many trees you have. If you kept them wrapped, like if you had, you know, more trees than you could unwrap the next morning and then rewrap the following night, then it's probably better to just leave them wrapped versus not wrapping them again for the next cold snap. Also, I see often that people don't get their weather from accurate sources. And so, Florida is very diverse. And just like that news article, somebody in Sarasota could see that news story and be like, oh my God, there's going to be freezing temperatures tonight. I need to
Right.
cover my plants, without realizing that they should check their local weather. So, I would say that's the most important thing because you definitely don't want to cover your plants unnecessarily. It is stressful to the plant, whether you protect it or not, having all of that, you know, you're going to lose sunlight. The airflow is not as good. There's going to be moisture trapped in there. So I don't cover, I mean, in my yard, I don't cover anything, but mostly because I have enough going on that, also I don't push the zone that hard. So any sort of damage would be very minimal. But just this past week, I covered up some mango trees. They were in full bloom, and it was in Lakeland. And their lows were projected like 32, 31 for last night. And I covered them up yesterday, and then I'll go back tomorrow and uncover them. So they'll stay covered, for one full day and 2 full nights. But they were, if any of those flowers got frost, that would be the whole the whole harvest for that spring pretty much gone. Uh, so we're
So this
trying our
was a
best to
mango
protect
tree
those.
that already had flowers. Okay.
Yeah, there was three of them. One of them was like probably 8 feet tall by like 6 feet wide. And the other ones were a lot smaller than that, like 4 foot tall, maybe by like 2 or 3 feet wide. But all in full bloom. And so this was the first year they were all real flowering and they all look real healthy. So we took extra precaution just to make sure that they get some mangoes this year. But, you know, I'd say once a plant gets so big that it's, you know, too much work to cover and, difficult to cover effectively. The large mango tree, I had to use three different tarps to cover that. And I just made sure that they overlapped and pinned together so that, the air, it could probably get through it, but not easily. So it
Right.
does trap a lot of that heat in.
So this next video I want to share is from the Millennial Gardener. Many people may be familiar with him. He's got some excellent content. He's in North Carolina, and I want to say Wilmington, so he's near the coast, but
Okay.
he's growing mangoes, avocados, citrus trees. He has a lot of, warm temperature plants. And so I think this is a good video to kind of see his strategy that he's using. And we'll get to this video right now.
Yeah, I mean North Carolina, especially the East Coast, is a similar climate to us, really. I think they're, maybe 8B, 9A, uh, but they can get snow sometimes, especially some flurries. But as far as the heat in the summers, and then having frost is rarer than further into the state. So
For sure.
that's good. Know your zone. This guy's got it dialed in.
Yeah. Let's check this out. It says 4.5 minutes. I don't know that we're going to go the whole length, but
But what about our warm season vegetables, like our tomatoes and peppers, if they're still alive? Well, that depends on your situation. If all you're going to get is a light frost, you can cover them up to keep the frost off of the plants and they should stay alive. But if you're going to get a hard freeze in the upper 20s, like I'm going to get, it's just not worth keeping them alive anymore. I mean, it's November 29th. We had a great season. The fact that it's almost December and I'm still picking fresh eggplant and peppers and tomatoes, it's really just incredible. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it quits for the year, take the last few harvests off of these plants, take what I can get, and just be happy that I've had such a long and fruitful growing season. But what about our trees and shrubs? What do we do about them now that the cold is coming? Well, that depends on what you're growing. If you're growing any kind of deciduous tree or shrub, like apples, peaches, pears, persimmons, figs, jujubes, pawpaws, or if you're just growing an ornamental deciduous tree, well, they naturally lose their leaves in fall and winter, and they go into a period of dormancy. So the hard frosts and freezes don't really affect them. They are actually important to shock them into a state of dormancy, and they need that dormant period to recover for the new growing season. For your tropical and subtropical trees that can't tolerate much cold or any cold at all, those are what you really have to protect during the cold. And luckily, I have developed three methods of doing so over the years that have worked out absolutely incredibly, which allows me to grow so many citrus, avocados, and other things that shouldn't grow in North Carolina here in North Carolina. Trick number one is to plant your most cold sensitive things up against the warm wall of your house. And your warm wall
Smart.
in the northern hemisphere is going to be the southern side of your home. In the southern hemisphere, it's going to be the northern side
That's
of
some
your home.
forward
That is
thinking
because
frost
that
protection.
is where
As soon
Yeah,
as you
sure.
plant, you got to think about it.
the entire day until sunset. And your house will absorb all of the heat of the sun throughout the day and radiate it back over the evening, which gives a little bit of a temperature buffer for your cold sensitive plants. So here where I live in North Carolina, this is the south wall of my house. I have noticed that the frost line is usually about 5 to 6 feet from the south wall of my house. So when I start getting the first frosts and freezes in November and December where I live, well, it won't frost and freeze within 5 to 6 feet of the house until usually we get into late December. And that's simply because of the radiative heat of the house itself. Now, you will have to select dwarfing trees that won't harm your foundation. That's why I'm growing a Lila semi-dwarf avocado. That's why I'm growing my
Yeah, good luck with that.
grafted on trifoliate rootstock. These are the mature heights of the trees, and they're very soft-wooded and shallow-rooted, so they're not going to impact the solid monolithic core of my foundation. They are foundation safe for me. Don't go planting a live oak or some kind of standard rootstock tree that's going to get 30 to 40 feet tall. make dwarf selections that are appropriate for a foundation planting like this. Step number 2 is to install incandescent outdoor rated Christmas lights on all.
Okay, Sam. This was really interesting. This is actually what I thought was most interesting
Okay.
to share because
I've
he
seen
makes
this done before.
he makes some really interesting points here.
Of your cold sensitive trees. They must be incandescent, not LED. LED bulbs do not give off any sufficient heat. Incandescent lights give off a whole lot. Now, if you go to a hardware store around this time of year, you'll probably find these old style incandescent mini lights, and these are fine for really small shrubs and trees, but these only give off about 40 watts of heat protection, so they're only appropriate for very small trees. What you really want to find are the old style incandescent C9 mini lights. Each of these are 175 watts. So they give off a tremendous amount of warmth. And the reason why I use these is because they are specifically designed to contact the foliage of your tree, and they are outdoor rated. So they are not a fire hazard like something like an aquarium heater in a jug of water or some other kind of heat trace that isn't suitable for outdoors can be. This is, in my opinion, a very safe way of doing it, and I have been very successful. Now, these incandescent lights, they can be tricky to find in the store. You may be able to find them this time of year if you're seeing this video before the holidays, but if you can't find them or you don't want to run to the store, I'll place links in the video description for some that you can order online. For my mature fruit trees, I use 2 strands of the C9 incandescent lights, and you
Yeah, it's pretty much where the video ends. I will link to this video down below because earlier he has hoops going over his garden beds and he uses the white cloth there. And he bought like PVC clamps and he didn't put them all the way down. He put them like 3/4 of the way, clamped them there. And he said, I'm going to leave these here for like a month or two when it's really cold because it's still going to get the dappled sun and the heat, but and again, those were his annual vegetable gardens, and but the clamps I thought were interesting rather than having to get like the C clamps that you got to snap on. These were just PVC clamps that clamped and kept the fabric tight, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to check out that video after we're done here. I mean, he definitely seems like he knows what he's talking about. Anybody who is you know, making those kinds of observations before they plant, checking where their frost lines are, seeing the temperature zones of their yard, that requires a lot of forethought. And I mean, these trees look amazing. I mean, this citrus tree here. But as far as the lights, that's totally true. I've seen people do it. It really does work. It is really difficult to find them. And so, I mean, if he's got a link in that video, definitely go check that out. Grab you some. Um, yeah, and again, it just comes down to like with the dwarf trees, with shrubs and stuff, that's going to be simple. Larger trees are going to be more difficult, but maybe, I mean, really the lights are probably the way to go, and the trees that are too large to actually cover, like, it would just be, as long as your neighbors aren't going to question why your Christmas lights look the way they do, maybe you can make them look interesting. Decorate your shrubs and be like, yeah, yeah, this is just part of the Christmas set. We're
Yeah,
just leaving these up.
I forgot, Sam. What did he say this tree was? What is this? A persimmons?
No, this is a citrus.
The
Some
citrus?
kind. I mean, it's so probably an orange.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
they look weird.
yeah, and the other one was an avocado, and there's no way that's the mature size of that thing.
He said it was a dwarf avocado, but
Yeah, but it looks like, I mean, he's got the if you see the hoop that's like over that,
yeah.
that's probably what he'll do to cover that thing. You set
Yeah,
those
later
hoops
on
up.
in this video, he's got the lights, you can see the lights on that tree, and then he does put like one of those fabrics over it. So I think it's like doubling up on heating and trying to trap the heat with that fabric.
Yeah, and what he said earlier about the annuals, 32 degrees is a lot different than 29 degrees. once you drop below 30 for any extended amount of time, there's not a lot you can do to protect the plants from reaching those temperatures. And so, if you're doing annuals, that's why working with the seasons is so important because, it's time to cut these down, plant some other things that are going to be all right with these temperatures. Don't waste your energy trying to save these things that you could just replant next season.
Yeah. Sweet.
I guess that's when to give up on a plant.
Yeah, yeah. Little throwback to a previous episode. Um, so I don't know if there's anything we really missed. I guess I let me ask this. My plumerias that go around my pool, they when they harden, they're like a brown wood stocky tree trunk, and the new growth is all the green tree limbs. And what I've noticed the one year that I had a bunch of them die back is they weren't really that hardy brown yet. And the hardy brown seems to um, be a lot more difficult to damage with cold weather. And so I would imagine that's probably true with most plants or trees specifically.
Yeah, that's gonna be true with most things. The freshest growth is always gonna be the most sensitive. Um, and then that kind of goes into how long that plant is exposed to temperatures that it can't handle. After maybe 20 minutes of that temperature, you're gonna get some damage to the green, the newest tips, and then as that time progresses, more and more of that wood will end up uh, I call it melting, which is I call it that because what's happening is the cells of the plant are full of water, and when it freezes, the water inside the cells expands and causes the cells to bust. And then when the water melts after it warms back up, those cells are dead and they've got, they're blown out. All of the liquid that was in them is gone. And that's why all of your plants will wilt because all of the cells have just lost all of their structure. Um, and so, the tissue of the plant, uh, older tissue usually has layers of dead cells around the living cells. And so those dead cells can insulate the interior cells a little bit. So that's why it takes a little bit longer. And then, usually, most plants, if the root system stays alive, the plant will regrow even if the top has died back from a frost. And the root system is going to stay warmer even longer because the soil acts as an insulator, and it takes a long time for that soil to reach freezing temperatures. So, you know, frost. Isn't the end of the world. Here in Florida, it's really just about riding the roller coaster. We'll get a couple frost scares every year, depending on where you live. It's good to know, you know, what the temperature zones for your plants in your garden are. What are you growing? What are they sensitive to? Um, if you haven't planted yet, it's great to observe your area, observe your local temperatures one winter, see, what your expected lows are, what areas of your yard might be warmer than others, and then making your planting choices in ways that'll benefit your plants and reduce the amount of frost coverage you may have to do. But if you do have to cover your plants, ideally you're using frost cloth. Use whatever you have though, if it's going to freeze and you want to save those things. But make sure that whatever you do use isn't making contact with the leaves. And, try to seal it to the ground. If you have some incandescent lights to add warmth, people ask a lot about lighting candles or such
Hmm.
underneath, their frost cloth. And yes, it works, but yes, it's dangerous. for all the reasons you'd think.
Yeah.
So, you know, do that with caution. But people do it. Someone I just saw was doing it last night to save some tomatoes they're growing. You know, you make a big dome and then that's just heat that gets trapped in there. But the lights, they do the same thing a little more safely. I'd still be cautious about the lights touching any of the fabric,
Sure.
but
Or even, I mean, leaves could probably burn leaves and branches, right? It's 170
hopefully
watts for some of
not.
those incandescents. I mean, that
Yeah,
can,
I mean, if they're on there too long,
if
maybe.
they're turned
But
on all night, I mean, those things could be, burn your hand touching them.
that's true. I'd be interested to see really, if there are any I mean, if there's ever any signs of that, but that's not what ends up in the YouTube video.
No, of course. Sam, what about watering? Like, okay, it's almost 6:30 now. It's cold out. I can't see right now anyway, but let's say it's 40 something degrees out. Um, should you be watering at night? Should you be watering in the morning, in the afternoon? When should you not water?
This time of year, so when it's cold, like if you're gonna have a frost potentially, and we're talking like, this is Central Florida mentality of panic. I don't know, maybe it'll reach 32 tonight, which does happen. This is the second time this year that's happened. Um, what you want to do is actually watering heavily in the hottest part of the day can be very helpful.
Okay.
Saturating the soil, that can help keep the soil warmer. And then as that water evaporates, that kind of creates a humidity dome underneath some of your plants. My other strategy, and I've never gone through a hard frost to really test it, but it's a strategy used by the strawberry farmers here. And then a couple other tropical farmers have mentioned it to me, working on papayas and pigeon peas, that they will run their irrigation, overhead irrigation that, is misting and not directly blasting plants. Um, but keeping that moisture in the air. And it's really about the constantly moving moisture. That moving water molecules, they're never going to freeze because if it'll turn into ice in the air and it would have to be a lot colder than maybe 32. Um, but I mean, really what the strawberry farmers say is, what you can get is a layer of ice on the plant. You water the plant, the water freezes on the leaves, but the leaves themselves don't freeze. The
Right.
water actually, or the ice acts as an insulator around that leaf. So, I mean, usually you run your irrigation overnight to protect from frost. Um, and your coldest parts of the night are usually between like 3 a.m. and right before sunrise. So I run my irrigation from like 3:45 to 5:45. Well, at least that's what I got it set on now because it does depend, you know, don't take standard advice because the daylight and sunrise changes throughout the year. If this was 3 months ago, I'd have to have the end time even further back and the beginning time further back because the sun wasn't coming up as early. So monitor your conditions, pay attention to your local weather, not the internet news.
Hmm.
And whatever you do see, just verify where it's from. How close is it to you? And if
Sure.
it's not within 10 miles, it's probably, even if it's down the road, it may not be accurate. The best thing you can do is get a weather station. Just put it up in the backyard.
There you go.
Collect as much data as possible, though, uh, to help you make informed decisions.
Awesome. Well, if you found this information valuable or you have something you want to add, please comment down below. So if someone's landing on this in the future, then they can have as much information available to them to make their own decisions. Sam, tell everybody where they can find more of you and Central Florida Abundance.
Yeah, y'all can check out Central Florida Abundance if it's still cold and you need some frost protection, or maybe it's springtime now and you need a little tidying in the garden. You can reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, or shoot me an email, and that's Central Florida Abundance. And also, we're going to be starting our spring season soon. So you can check out igofarm.com to check out our produce boxes if you want to get one. If you're going to come out to Auburndale and pick it up, we'd love to have you. We'll show you around the farm. But
Excellent.
these hats aren't on there. But you got some cool shirts for sale, don't you, Mike?
We've got shirts, but make sure you head to Mike's in the Garden and follow on your favorite social media: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Rumble, and also make sure you head over to our Etsy shop where you can get some dope designs, some funny, crazy, silly shirts, and step your game up. Get some dope gear.